at 7 p.m. Tonight, I asked one of our committee members and a veteran to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So Ron, in honor of Veterans Day, would you please do that? One-legged. It's tricky. I am going to actually dispense with the roll call, Gina, because we are all here, I believe.
Yes, we are.
So we won't go through that. I'm going to open up to public comments in a minute. I'm just going to read a couple notes. I read them last time. Some of you weren't here, but this is just kind of some general rules for public comments to keep in mind. And we'll see how it goes. So obviously, anyone is welcome to speak for public comments at standard meetings to anything that's on the agenda. We're not sticking completely to the 2-minute rule, but we really appreciate that you can try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. If it starts to go on much longer, we're probably going to try to cut you off so everybody has an opportunity to talk. If someone has said something that you are about to say, if you just want to say what they said, a repeat, that would probably help as well. We're going to try to keep it within 15 minutes if possible. You should identify yourself by your name and your address so that our clerk who is on the phone can get that information down. If you're speaking for a group, you should identify yourself as so. If you have any written statements, you can give them to us and they'll be part of the minutes. There won't be immediate replies to any questions or concerns. If anyone hasn't been here before for public comments, that's kind of how it works. We'll listen to you. The meeting will go on. Hopefully some of your questions will be answered then. And I just want to stress for people to be kind. Any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about members or against any person connected with the town of Trumbull or any other individual, firm, or corporation is not permitted. So I didn't do a sign-up sheet. What I'll have you do is come up and ask at the end if it's slowing down, if anybody else wants to speak. So whoever would like to start, feel free. Different glasses.
Hello. Click it on. There's a little button. With the green light, it's on.
Hello, test 1, 2. It's World Kindness Day. Did you guys know that? Yeah. Laurel Walsh, 5944 Main Street. Hello. I stand here tonight, along with my neighbors, having many concerns regarding the potential building site at Grace Church. I've researched the Ash Garden, which exists on the Grace Church grounds and was taken care of by the Episcopal Diocese. A deconsecration ceremony was performed, and families were notified to the best of their abilities, but the rest is unknown. For those who don't know, a deconsecration ceremony is a ritual that removes a religious blessing from a building or space by prayer. The diocese cannot provide any other records of any movement of these mortal remains, and not one neighborhood member has seen any machinery performing this dig. I want this area to have an archaeological dig to confirm no remains still exist. This church is over 200 years old, and who knows how many past parish members may be residing here. Paving over this without proper research would be inappropriate and morally wrong. I have some personal issues as well. We have never had the opportunity to have an open dialogue, so here it is. It appears that every other neighbor of mine has better buffering than me. I am just as important and should receive the same amount of buffering. Your administration promised to be good neighbors. I have tried my best to believe this to be true, but your actions speak otherwise. I do not feel as though you have our neighbor's best well-being in your best interest. I would like an explanation of the turning lane that was mentioned. I would like to ask why the schoolhouse is unlocked and not secured 24 hours a day. Why is this turning into a commuter parking lot with loitering individuals and people sleeping in their cars? As a tax-paying citizen, this is unacceptable. Security cameras need to be installed, just like other town properties have. I am requesting signs stating it is closed at dusk because...
Mrs. Walsh, can I just for 1 second, and you could probably continue, but it sounds like some of the things you're talking about are what's happening at the property now, right? So it feels like maybe that's something you should be bringing up with the town and maybe not this committee, because we have no ownership of the property as it is now. So
They're all safety concerns for our neighborhood.
right, but it sounds like you're talking about things that are happening now as far as the littering. Is that what you're discussing?
Well, we never get to have a dialogue, so I thought tonight would be a
Okay,
great time.
Probably not for this committee, though, for those particular things. So maybe if you want to jump ahead, and not that you shouldn't be bringing those up, but we have no control over that.
The first selectman's here, you should.
Mr. McGill. Thank you.
Dialogue.
But feel free to, I mean, if you want to just, I understand what you're saying. I feel like we're not going to be able to address that for you in any way. But why don't you continue? And if there's something else you want to say that's particular to the building, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
In closing, I'd just like to ask you to put yourself in my and my family's shoes. If you would, I think you'd understand how my neighborhood and I feel. Thank you.
Mark McKeel, 27 Edgewood Avenue, lifetime Trumbull resident. Good evening, committee members. I'd like to thank my neighbors and the neighbors from the Long Hill Village for showing up this evening. This is the this is the 8th town meeting we've attended in 5 months regarding the Grace Church property. Kudos to all you folks for taking time out of the UConn game tonight to be here. As neighbors, we live with the concerns of proposed development at Grace property every day. We're sick. We're physically ill over what may or may not take place there. Concerns for our property values and other concerns that you're going to hear tonight. As the building committee, you are tasked with selecting the appropriate what and where for this project. This committee should be required to produce a detailed, actionable, measurable timeline for each architectural and town activity to bring this project to a decision point. As neighbors who are very nervous about this, we would like to know who's doing what and when. If such a plan exists, where is it available to the public? This evening, we'd hope to hear discussion, updates, and status of the traffic studies. Have they been conducted? And if not, when? Geotech testing. As an example, there are now wetland delineation flags on the Grace property. However, as a former member of Inland Wetlands, when I inquired, I was unable to get any information or mapping from the Inland Wetlands office as of October 30th, 24. Has bore testing been done for the presence of ledge that may require future blasting? Are there any plans to incorporate low-impact development and green development? Where will the existing senior center buses and support vehicles be parked overnight? Where will the exterior garbage and recycling bins be located? The large HVAC system required to heat and cool a 30,000 plus multi-story building. Will the noise impact the residents in our neighborhood, or were we told it'll be minimal? If this site is ultimately selected, what environmental hazards, such as asbestos and other toxic hazards, exist that our neighbors will be subjected to during demolition? And here's a big one. We expect there are pests and vermin presently in the vacant site. We are concerned that during the demolition, the vermin will seek warm refuge and our homes will become their new homes. As the French author Voltaire said, with great power comes great responsibility. We ask you to use that power responsibly. Thank you.
Not sure I can follow up a Voltaire quote. Do my best.
They didn't think I was there.
Brian Walsh, 5944 Main Street, Trumbull, Connecticut. Members of the Community Facilities Committee. As residents, we request the public disclosure of the current architectural contract with QA&M, along with detailed project milestone timeline plan with associated costs for each accomplished activity required to bring this project to a committee decision and ultimately a town referendum. This information should be part of the public record and posted to the Trumbull Community Building Facilities Committee website. This should be public information for the residents to access and not subject to require a FOIA request to obtain the information. I would also like to ask why the emergency exits that lead to the Long Hill Village were removed to buffer in the second set of drawings from the architects. While I am all in favor of the buffer, it was explained that the site was, at the site walk by the head of the DPW, George Estrada, that the connections were needed in case of emergency. Why now are they not necessary? I have been in the emergency service for over 24 years, and I understand the importance of being able to get apparatus behind the church, or behind the community center if something were to happen. You only have one road that leads to the back of the building. If there was a large-scale incident at the senior center, it would be almost impossible to move the traffic out and get emergency vehicles behind the building. Not to mention that everyone would be driving out the one entrance the emergency services would be trying to get back to. This is just one more example of why this is not suitable for the scale of the facility that the town needs. Let's be smart and find a proper location for the senior center that the town, and most importantly, the seniors deserve. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marlene Silverstone, 3 Cherry Blossom Lane, Long Hill Village. I want to know, do you have any project owners' requirements, some kind of narrative telling us what the architect is designing for?
Can't really be an exchange.
Okay, no, I'm just asking the question, okay, that's okay. And then as far as the process here, the design process, and also how decisions are made, is there a town council, is that the next step? And you're showing plans that are the plans that we're seeing tonight, or we've seen but we haven't fully vetted or commented on? So I'd like more information on that. And then after the town council, do you go to zoning? And what does that entail? Is there any zoning changes due to this site and the intent of the building? And as far as the emergency part of it, as a Long Hill Village resident, I don't want public or any pass-throughs, because that would, I think there's a way to address it, but I address it on the property itself, please. Thank you.
I'm here to speak on behalf of a resident that couldn't make it this evening. Her name is Sherry Boyd at 16 Pinehurst Street.
We need your name and address.
My name is Patricia Kelly, 15 Gibson Avenue. One of the most beautiful views when one drives by on Main Street in Trumbull is the site of the Grace Church 5. Mabel the Maple was alive before the town of Trumbull was incorporated, and we will not stand by and let these trees be sacrificed for a parking lot. I was informed by the Conservation Commission that when the Hardy Lane property was being considered, the town hired a service to compile a natural resource inventory, including heritage trees, and we would hope for the same for the Grace Church property. The Arbor Day Foundation recognized Trumbull as a Tree City USA, and I think it is important that we do our best to live up to that. The Trumbull Conservation Commission has 1,000 trees for Trumbull program, but doesn't make sense for a town with a plan like this to also have a plan that protects the heritage trees in town. Has Trumbull established a tree preservation program to help preserve and protect the trees in the community? Is there a municipal body in Trumbull charged with protecting trees? Who is responsible for overseeing the 2014 Trumbull Plan of Conservation and Development? Has that plan been modified? There are too many relevant sections in that plan to present in the 2 minutes that I have here, but I plan to submit a summary of these goals and preservation strategies as part of the official record. My suggestion is to have a smaller footprint, push the senior center back away from the road, and keep the area where the Grace Church 5, or as a park with a couple of benches, maybe a picnic table. Thank you for your time and consideration. And just on my behalf, I just want to remind everyone that town council hasn't approved the location yet. And 2, when public comment is in any kind of forum like this, we're not supposed to interrupt and let the people talk. That's the most important part. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Chris Pettinella, and 69 Old Churchill Road. Now, I'm not trying to, persuade anybody here with a long speech. Most of you will vote along party lines anyways. I would like to leave you with all a few questions. Is this two-story building appropriate for this residential neighborhood and the steep slope? Are the historic trees going to be cut down? And Ms. DeSoro once said she loves our tree-lined roads, and we try to protect them. Would you like this building plan just a few feet away from your property as a neighbor? Is this appropriate area? Is this the appropriate area for the establishment? We need a plan and detailed studies, especially regarding traffic and the environment. And I can share on the traffic note numerous pictures. I wouldn't do that to you, but I could. Of the long lines of traffic, especially during school dismissal time. Traffic studies are demanded by neighbors and should be public to all Trumbull residents, as we will all be affected. Everybody in Trumbull, Monroe, and every surrounding area will be all affected by the traffic. Think of this as a neighbor and a taxpayer, not a politician. Thank you.
Hello, Elizabeth Wecker, 16 Edgewood Avenue. I read a comment that someone on the building committee stated that they felt the Grace Church site was preferable to other sites which had been considered for the community center because it was already developed. And I have an issue with the term developed. Yes, there's a church there and a parking lot, and public services were conducted there, but I can't impress upon you enough that it's not a megachurch. It was a quiet little neighborhood church with a small congregation where 2 services on Sunday were conducted. They were a great neighbor and quiet, and it was a great relationship. And I feel the need to dispel any notion that the residents of Edgewood Avenue and the other abutters are somehow already used to having or to living next to a busy public facility where traffic, noise, lighting are somehow already commonplace and an accepted part of our daily life, and that a much larger senior community center on the property would somehow seamlessly slip into that space, unnoticed by neighbors. Nothing could be further from the truth. So I respectfully ask you to take this into consideration when deciding on the suitability of this property for the demolition of the church and construction of the senior center. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yep.
My name is Elizabeth Jones. I live at 9 Pinehurst Street in Trumbull. I'm standing up today because I just want to really reiterate the traffic issue. I have had many, many, many days where I can't get out of my street, where I cannot make a left turn to go to Stop and Shop. I have to make a right turn, make a left into the Lutheran Church parking lot, make a U-turn, and then a right back out. And for the life of me, I just don't understand how the town thinks that putting up a building that has 210 parking spots is going to make that better. It's just not fair. Please, we're asking you, please don't do this to our neighborhood. Over a couple of pickleball courts. You know what? There's lots of other places in Trumbull that can be looked at. And I'm tired of hearing that we can't develop up by Indian Ledge or the Nature Center, where there's large campuses where we could accommodate indoor and outdoor recreational activities. We've already spent close to $14 million on these properties. That's $14 million we could have spent putting in electric and plumbing at those locations. Please, don't do this to us. All the charm of Long Hill, it's disappearing. Thank you.
Anyone else? I am going to close public comments at 7:19. Thank you for your comments. This isn't on, sorry. Before we move on with the agenda, I just want to clarify, public comments are difficult, right? It wouldn't be a proper dialogue for us to go back and forth. As far as me speaking to you, Mrs. Walsh, I'll just say it's important that we stick to what can make a difference to this committee, and I just didn't want you to waste your time in talking about something that we couldn't do anything about. As far as everybody else, we're listening to you. It may not always be exactly what you want to hear, but I hope you'll see that there is a process to this. We are very, very early on in the process of even looking at this, so a lot of the things that were mentioned as far as studies and those kind of things, they're not here yet, but they will be coming. We would never look at a site without doing all those things. So I just want to reiterate that this is, believe it or not, early in looking at this. I know it feels like a lot of meetings to you guys. It's nothing compared to what the committee has seen as far as meetings. So I just wanted to make that clear before we put the architects up to kind of go through some of those things. And with that, I'm going to move on with the agenda and ask for approval of the October 9th, 2024 minutes. Can I have someone do that, please?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 9th meeting.
Okay, and that's Kelly. I'm going to remind
Oh,
committee
sorry,
members,
Kelly
sorry that she
Malazzi.
is on the phone. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Gia.
Second, Dave Galla.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody have any changes? We're good. For long ones, that's great. Okay, so all in favor of minutes as written? I think is everybody in? Okay, great. Okay, so I am going to turn this over to Tom and Rocco from QA&M Architects. I'm going to set this up just a little bit for you guys, just before they dive in, although they'll do a much better job than I will. After our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about a lot of different things and some contemplation going on, and by 9 a.m., I'm going to do kudos again to our architects because I got a call early the next morning that they wanted to kind of relook at some things. They'll show you that today. This is in direct response to some people's concerns, hopefully looking for some compromises and just some discussion with the group. But whenever you guys are ready.
Great, thank you. Tom R. Carey with QAM Architecture, 195 Scott Swamp Road, Farmington, Connecticut. So thanks for having us back. I think Vicki just mentioned that after last week's meeting and after the prior meeting and the meeting prior, we had received a lot of feedback from the general public in this committee, and it was our position that a lot of that feedback was very positive, made a lot of sense regarding the potential direction for the project. So we've made a number of significant changes to the concept that we would like to present to the committee and we think should be heavily considered. Rocco is going to go through the design, but I wanted to talk a little bit about those. One, programmatically, the Senior Center voiced strong opinions about having the drop-off for patrons at the front entrance as opposed to the rear entrance. We took a hard look at that to see if we could make that possible, and we have a solution that we think makes sense. Two, we heard a lot of feedback from the public about the size of the facility, the location of the facility, and more importantly, a lot of feedback about the gymnasium, that the programs, the heavy recreation programs that would be also able to use this gymnasium are going to bring significant amounts of usage and traffic to the site. We had a talk with Senior Center Director, and after considering it, the past scheme had had a split level entrance at the rear, so you'd go down to the gym and up to a mid-level, into a mid-level, and up to the senior level. We took a real hard look at an option that would just have 2 levels and would not have a full height recreation gymnasium. At the time, one of your committee members, Mr. Buswell, pointed out that if this can't be a state-of-the-art gymnasium, then maybe this isn't the place for the state-of-the-art gymnasium, and maybe it should be a senior recreation space. Doing so would allow us to consolidate some functions, Exercise, dance classes could be a large space that could be divisible. Pickleball could be held in that space as it requires significantly less height, but all of the senior activities and exercise programs could happen there. And a small number of communal recreation activities could happen there that are much smaller in nature. So we took a hard look at that, and we're able to present a solution that has overall 2 stories in height, walks out to grade, has exit directly to grade. A number of egress issues go away, code and life safety issues go away. The size of the facility gets smaller, the amount of usage gets smaller from an occupant standpoint, and the amount of required parking gets smaller. You'll see in our scheme tonight that we've developed a concept that really could pave maybe only 100 to 110 cars front and back of the site, with all of the rest of the parking being held in reserve. We heard comments last week or last time about connections to the adjacent neighborhood. Those were just proposed conceptually for emergency or a life safety option, but we don't need those at the site. The site will support ingress and egress, and we can develop a boulevard access which would protect one access way to the rear of the site for emergency vehicles. So we've removed those, and we've strengthened the buffers in the concept to the adjacent neighbors. So I think there's a lot of positive things that we're changing based on the feedback that we're hearing, not only from your committee, but from the neighbors during public outreach. Additionally, I can give you an update. We understand that traffic, just like at all the sites we've explored, is going to be a big issue. We have engaged a traffic engineer, Ty and Bond. They are an on-call engineer with the town of Trumbull. They've done previous work for the town, and we're going to take an independent look at this site. We have decided not to engage the traffic engineer from our last exercise. We are going with one of the town's on-call engineers. So that work is underway. I did hear some comments about geotechnical study or borings. Those would be done in the future as we get into further development of the concept. But it's really important at this point that we identify what is the concept ultimately going to be, how will it fit on site, and then we'll start to work out some of those details. I did hear something really interesting this evening about archaeological investigations. We've done a number of projects and public projects on town halls, churches directly adjacent to cemeteries and burial grounds. If there are, special places on this site that have to be investigated, that would be a part of the process. Before any full excavation was done, an archaeological assessment would be done. Typically, that's done a little further down the road in the process. I heard some comments about green development. Of course, I'll reiterate that this project will stand as a beacon for sustainability in the community. We will make it as environmentally friendly as possible. That could consider many different things. Location for dumpsters and HVAC devices. Those are all things that we will develop as we move forward, but those are important, and we will look for further feedback from the community on those things. And the community has done an environmental assessment on the existing building. They did it before purchasing the building. Any removal of the building, if the project goes forward, would be done in accordance with the state's requirements for asbestos or hazardous materials removal. As far as my contract goes, I'm sure you guys can have access to that. me see if I got all the other things. So that's where we are in the process. I am going to turn it over to Rocco so he can present the new or the most up-to-date revision of the concept for your feedback and direction. Ultimately, we would be, in terms of process, we are going to keep moving forward with the concept until this committee says, okay, generally, we like this concept. We want you to proceed with it. So there's no forward movement at a heavy pace until this committee approves the general direction and decides that we should go forward. So I hope that clarifies a few things. And here's Rocco.
Rocco Petito, project architect for QA&M Architecture, 195 Scotts Pump Road in Farmington, Connecticut. So if we could get the presentation up. Oh, sorry.
Tom's a little shorter.
But he's cuter. All right. So this is the site plan of the Grace Church property. We've seen this before. So this is kind of the newer concept of the site. We've shrunk the building not only lengthwise, but also widthwise to kind of pull it from the property lines more than where we had it before. You can see the two planted buffers going down the down the hill, down both property lines, and that overflow parking area in the green is more than half of what we have as far as impervious paved parking at the moment. New things about the site plan that we have on here, the lower patio. So don't envision that all to be impervious. I see benches, I see planters, I see things that can be developed into that space to make it a very welcoming, outdoor space for the seniors. I guess I should say too, we've also kind of moved it more towards the road to kind of split the difference of the two buildings adjacent to it that are on Main Street, to kind of keep that frontage or that sight line of the buildings. As far as the main floor, the main entry for the senior center from the front, things haven't changed much. We see you have the admin use services as you walk in. We have the library and lounge on the other side, classrooms as you walk down the hallway, the kitchen and their office and area at the end that connects to the multi-purpose room. We also, as you come back down, you see the cafe space as a kind of an entrance space to the multi-purpose area. It's also a big lobby that more or less looks out the back. So that's another kind of space that we've envisioned people to be casually socializing in. Also a flexible space that can be used as a queuing space for the multi-purpose room for an event. Then, of course, the games room, and then a conference room back up towards the north side of the building, or on the right side of the drawing as you're looking at it. Okay, so now we're in the lower area. So as you can see, we've kind of really condensed this up. The footprint of the gym is about the same, but the idea of this building is that the floor-to-floor height will be much different, and you'll kind of see that in the rendering. This is kind of a consideration as to what we really want to do in that space. This space can be used as, the exercise dance room. It can be used for pickleball courts. It could be used for kind of a small basketball court, but there wouldn't be any kind of competitions here because we don't have the head height. And, that would be a decision for the committee as to how tall you want to make it usable for other, sports such as basketball or volleyball, or if it just remains kind of a multi-purpose low sport space. So you see the fitness area in the purple and kind of in the middle, and then the red space in the middle and the lower level. That's what we envision as the food pantry. And one of the ideas that came out of kind of developing this is that it could be used as almost an open market in the summertime, which is something that the Senior Center brought up and was very interested in doing. So this is kind of an aerial of the model. You can see on this elevation, we haven't changed much of we've changed the look a little bit, but not really the style of it very much. You can see there's a front row of parking, there's a drop off at the main entry, similar to what we had before. You can see kind of depicted with the little computer trees going down the site and how they relate to the parking, to the neighbor's property lines. Here's kind of a closer look of the scale. And then from the east side, you can see that's where we have the two-story elevation. So you have the main entrance, the kind of main entrance there in the middle, and then the pickleball courts and the market off to the left of the building. And then for this presentation, we kind of had a couple of scheme ideas. You know, this one being kind of the first generation look at it. And then we also have kind of a toned down, little simpler version with a shed roof off the back as opposed to the hip roof on the back over the pickleball courts and multi-purpose room areas. And then that's the end of that part.
Great. Oh,
Oh,
did you mess it up?
no, you turned it off.
Oh,
If we can get
You lose it?
oh, great. Just want to point out a couple things. As we mentioned, we would anticipate that about half of this, so the parking here is a diagram that shows what the maximum parking area could be. We anticipate that about half of that, about halfway between the building and the back of the site, would be actual hardscape parking. The rest would be grass pavers or grass area. And that parking could happen in terms of, overflow type events. I would also try and point out that this demonstrates what the strength of the buffer can be. We've allocated a lot of lateral space for the buffer. So if you go back to the site plan, you'll see the distance between the parking area and the property line is pretty significant. It's like 25 feet. So we have a lot of space to develop a buffer of some sort, whether it's 2 rows of planted trees, a row of planted trees and a fence, a stone wall. The buffer itself is something that would be a significant design element as a part of the project. But we feel that buffer is important. You can see that the building sits into the grade. So while the lower story, which is now, in the last scheme, the floor-to-floor height was about 28 feet. So we had 28 feet and 4 feet of structure. So you had about 24 feet clear to the underside of structure. In this scheme, we're proposing about 18 feet floor-to-floor. So the building's about 10 feet shorter in total height. So at the back of the site, it is 2 stories, but you can start to see how there's retaining walls on each end of the building because that 2-story structure is actually built into the grade that dips away. And then I just wanted to point out again, and we included this, I think it's important, is that it shows that the height of the structure is really in keeping with the height of the adjacent structures. And that's the goal, is that from a scale and development standpoint, we want this building to be very, similar in height and size of its elements. You can see the gables on the front of the building are similar in scale to the gables on some of the structures, massing-wise in general. And you can see that in this iteration, we added the drop-off, the covered drop-off lane to the upper level of the building, so that would not happen at the rear of the site. At the rear of the site, where you see that entrance the two-story entrance, that roof would probably project out. People could drive up to the curb and drop someone off, and then they would walk, through the patio and go into the building. That patio space may get smaller. It's just conceptual at this time. And again, if we can move the parking closer to the building, that's beneficial. So that's the most recent concept. We think the changes that that we've made are beneficial in many different ways. As I mentioned earlier, it would reduce the amount of occupancy and traffic on the site, reduce the amount of programming on the site, particularly as it relates to having an auditorium, a gymnasium. But we will be able to meet all of the senior center's requirements for recreation. Currently, they have one pickleball court that they jam into their sort of multi-function space. This space would be really dedicated to dance and fitness or pickleball. This concept also has the benefit that we would also have a multi-purpose room. So flexibility of programming basically doubles. But now we have the potential for 3 pickleball courts. This space could be divided, and it could be used for all sorts of dance and fitness activities. One of the benefits to this change is a cost reduction in the projected cost of the facility. The longer we take, pursuing a new center for the town of Trumbull, the more the costs for just the same size facility continue to grow. So by taking this approach, we're really taking a fiscally responsible approach as it relates to the cost of the building. And we do believe that this approach addresses Michelle's concerns about having the food pantry located in an exterior access point. Note that the youth services functions would be moved upstairs. Yeah. I'll take questions.
Here's that one. Probably, I know people probably have a lot of questions, so I think probably the best we will do is kind of go around. I just wanted to add one thing before we do that, and then I'll ask my questions last. Is a lot of this is all about the senior center. That was our goal from the beginning. The senior center is in horrible shape right now. We all know that. That's been our motivation all along. There is still, even in this rendering, opportunities for more community use than we have now. We keep calling it a pickleball area. It really is it could be a multi-recreational area. What it can't be at this height is a basketball program. So I think I just want to stress that there's still opportunities for the community to use this, but in a much smaller scale than we've been looking at. I will add, just because it'd be unfair not to, I don't think our Parks and Rec director is very happy about losing a basketball court. I know it's something we've talked about for a long time. It would be a compromise for sure, and it's something this committee should be discussing as the night goes on. But I just wanted to reiterate that there is community use still a part of this, and we haven't even discussed the meeting rooms concept of it as well, so not to lose sight of that as we're talking. So I'm going to start over there because I know, Mike, you had your hand up first, so then we'll maybe wiggle our way around.
Sure. Tom, can you go back to that last picture you had with the...
Mike, yeah, thank you.
Can you go back to the picture with the 3 pickleball courts?
Yeah, I need some help from IT.
So the white bar across the top, that is not part of the building?
That is unexcavated space. So the front wall is the front wall of the building up above. So essentially it's space that's not a basement. It's unexcavated, so it's dirt.
Might not be a popular thing. The pickleball, they currently have 1 pickleball court right now?
They have space for one pickleball court, which I think is taped off in their multifunction room. But yeah, one.
They can't hold other things in the multi-function room when they.
No, I guess my question is, would it be the worst idea to take out one of the 3 pickleball courts? They're still getting a second. We'd be able to shrink the building a little bit. It would help structurally and financially. So they still get 2, where if they wanted to do 2 pickleball courts going simultaneously, they have that. If they wanted to have 1 pickleball court designation and the other as like a Zumba type, you'd have a fitness and a pickleball. So, I mean, my question would it be necessary to go to 3? Could we get away with 2? If you want to keep 3, would we be able to do an add alternate so we'd see the cost difference if we went with the 2-court route compared to 3, just so we see the price difference?
That's a decision that would have to be made by this committee. Physically, we could make that happen, and certainly we could also structure it as we could structure anything in the building as an add alternate if something wanted to be added or deducted.
Thanks.
Tony, you have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Two questions. Where are there historic trees, old trees, 200-year-old trees on this site? And B, are they going to be protected?
That's a good question. I'm not aware. There is one significant tree in the front space. At this point in time, I don't have access to the survey yet. Actually, that's a good point. The survey will show where that tree is actually located, and we can coordinate our concept with where that tree is currently located. At this point in time, I'm not going to tell you whether we're proposing to take the tree or not. Essentially, I think our concept shows the tree gone, but I don't know where it is. There was a comment earlier today about wetlands flagging. That's typically done as a part of the surveying process. I know the town, via Public Works Director, has engaged a survey of the property. So those wetland flags were probably put there by a soil scientist so the surveyor can identify on a plan where those wetlands are. That information will help our planning exercise going forward. Getting back to the trees, I'm not aware if they are not heritage tree, how old they are. I don't have any information about them. This is the first I've heard about that this evening. I'm pleased to know it has a name. But 5 names. Thank you for the clarification. That's something that is new information to us, and we will have to look into and work with going forward.
Okay.
I'm sorry, your second question.
No, that was it
Okay.
was the 2-part on the same topic, and probably unnecessary to say, but I'd like this committee to try and protect whatever historic trees, heritage trees. Is the first time I heard that word. As we move forward.
We're just going to kind of go in order, make it easier.
All right. So I appreciate the effort that was made to reduce the size of the footprint of the building. I think that that's admirable, especially with the comments that have been made both from the public and from the committee. One of the things that I am concerned about is shrinking the size of the building for the purpose of shrinking the size of the building. And what I mean by that is in the previous rendering, there were really nice add-ons like an elevated walking path that was in the gym, I believe was in one of our renderings at one point, which I think adds a lot of, it adds a lot to the building. It adds a lot for the use of the building for people who can participate in activities such as walking when there's inclement weather. Also, if it's hot out or whatever the case might be. I think that the size of the gymnasium for multi-purpose use should be reconsidered because shrinking the size to 3 pickleball courts or 2 pickleball courts for the mere sake of the word pickleball, I think is a little short-sighted. And for this committee, I would recommend that we consider that because this is a relatively new fad, and it could at some point disappear. So having a building specifically designed around an activity that has been around for several years and probably will last a while, but who knows, I don't think adds value to the building as a whole. On top of that, I think that there are people who use the senior center who would like to shoot a basketball once in a while. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. And again, as we look at this facility, I think from all of us who have been here for a very long time, multi-use has been one of the main topics that we've always discussed, not only in our meeting spaces, but also in the fitness and other areas. So I just want to make sure that we consider multi-use as we go forward.
I'll just comment that in the current iteration of the plan, we haven't changed the footprint. So the size of the gym, from a footprint perspective, hasn't changed. The height changed. So the height is prohibitive of adult, like full basketball competitions or a volleyball type use. However, the gym, auditorium, rec room could be used for lots of different things, including pickleball. And we've put the pickleball courts in there because it's a hot topic for seniors. It also demonstrates scale of the space, but we don't anticipate it being just a pickleball court by any means. It would be a multifunction space that could be used for lots of different activities. And I'm sure we could envision what those might be. And as far as a walking path goes, in many gymnasiums, they have a walking path around the perimeter of the gym, which could be designated. Yes, the elevated walking path is a nice amenity. There are a couple centers that have them. Mansfield has a really nice one. But it's not a deal breaker. And during inclement weather, you could still have walking around the perimeter of the space while other activities are going on. So just keep that in mind, but I understand the concerns. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, would you mind putting up the view of the back again?
The back.
Yeah, showing forward. I think you had the shed and...
This one or this one?
Yeah, that one. Either one's good. So the height, right now, the height for the pickleball is, you said, how tall is that now?
It's about 18 feet.
18 feet. And the old height was that the minimum requirement for a basketball or volleyball, or was that just the height we picked?
We established it based on the CIAC height for basketball, the clearance.
Right. And is there any way to just have that height? I know this is kind of an odd question. Is there any way to have that height just above the pickleball court and fare that into the rest of the building?
Possibly, but one of the things, it would be physically very difficult. We'd probably have to depress the floor at this point to get the height. The elevations on the site are such that we've kind of maxed out what our capacity is and to maintain grade access, which we think is a really nice amenity for the programming. We've also reduced the footprint of the building to accommodate what I would say is the most efficient layout in this iteration and still meets all of the program needs that are identified in the formal program that this committee has established after 8 years of studying. That reminds me, there was a comment this evening from the public asking, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish in the center? I'd just point out there is a formal program that has been established by this committee over the last 8 years, and that is public record that could be provided as well. So it would be very difficult for me to take footprint of the first level away to accommodate the volume. we'd have to depress the floor. And that could be done, but then it presents access issues.
Thank you.
Okay, Ron Feligno. I didn't notice a pantry exterior door. I thought that was mentioned as one of the prerequisites.
Yeah, so there is one. I don't know if we could show again. So next, if you look at this directly to the left of the entrance doors, there's a glass garage door. That would be the exterior entrance to the pantry. So if I go back to the floor plate for the lower level, you can see in the red area that says food pantry at the outside, there's an open space. We just anticipated that we would do an overhead rolling door there. It would accommodate deliveries a little bit better. It would also allow that opening to be very wide and a big.
Part of the aspect of the food pantry is kind of not confidentiality, but basically respecting people's financial position who utilize the pantry. So would that work, or would that be sufficient for people to go in and out with the basket or a cart and things?
Yes, they could go in both ways, and we have the opportunity. We could, I mean, if we feel that's not ideal, we can add a regular operating door directly to the outside in combination with other doors. I think that would programmatically we can make that happen.
I just got a thumbs up from Michelle, so I'm done with that topic.
Okay.
I didn't notice a nursing area like we have now with Jen Gillis's area and also the nursing area. I didn't notice where that was mentioned.
Yeah, so originally we had a dedicated nurses' room, health screening room. And then if you look on this plan, in the upper left-hand corner, there's an orange box called conference room. That is a room that can be used for health screening. So it was planned that room can be multifunctional. So if the senior center is planning outside screenings or instructions or evaluations, it can be done there. And that's in a relatively discrete access area.
That's a separate access area on the far right?
No, in the upper left. See in the upper left, there's an orangish red box called conference room just above the bathrooms.
To the blue classrooms.
I'm looking at exterior patio.
No.
Other side.
No, other side. See the green kitchen?
Oh, that little conference room.
Yes, directly across. That little conference room at one point was a health screening room. It was a dedicated medical screening space, but Michelle prefers the flexibility of it as more of as a conference room, so it can be used as health screening. It can be used as a meeting room.
Okay. I think the track and gym area I thought was a good idea initially. I don't know how it fits in. I didn't see the gym area in these renderings, did I?
In the floor plan.
Or I didn't notice it.
In the lower level, this is the lower level of the center. To the left is a big light blue box, and we're showing 3 pickleball courts.
Right.
That is we'll call it gymnasium recreation center. So it is the size of the gym from a footprint, from a plan perspective, but it's not as tall anymore. It's
so that eliminates the gym area, the exercise area?
It doesn't eliminate it. It just prevents it from being essentially used for formal basketball events and volleyball events because it doesn't have the height for that. But it could be used for pickleball and lots of other
I understand
recreation
that.
events.
And relative to pickleball and whatnot, I kind of feel we should address the current needs. If it's pickleball, so be it. And if it's something that comes along that the seniors like, let them have it. Because I think the longevity of the sport will outlive the longevity of the players. So with that in mind, I mean, give the people what they want initially.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's it. I think that's all I have at the moment. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you talk about the I appreciate the visual on the buffering. Can you talk about, I think it's the southwest side of the building where it's less robust than the rest?
Let me go to the site plan. Okay, let me go here. So the southwest side, which is at the bottom left of the proposed site plan. So in this configuration, there's currently parking against that property line. There's actually an easement there. The neighbors have, have rights for parking spaces. The neighbors, and I don't know the neighbors, so please don't be offended. I'm just talking off the top of my head. The neighbors have some outdoor, activity. They had some, play equipment out there. They have the right to park there. So we developed the concept so that there would be parking along that viaduct, so we could maintain their access rights and their parking rights. And we are showing a thinner buffer there, a parked buffer, so that when cars are parked, we anticipate it as a low fence or a low planted hedge. So cars aren't, headlights from the cars aren't, shining into their space. But we have a lot of flexibility there. We haven't spoken with the neighbor. This could be reconfigured in different ways. To be more favorable to the neighbor's function and create a little bit bigger buffer there.
So my question would be, let's say we wanted to create a uniform buffer all the way around. That's doable.
It's
There's nothing holding us back.
There's nothing holding us back other than on that side of the site, we want to develop some parking either on the south side or flipped up against the building, or maybe a combination thereof. So we have a little bit less space. So the buffer in that area could be thicker than it currently is, but there's not enough space to make it as thick as the planted buffer, let's say, on the southeast side. But there's different options for buffer too. So it could be a stone wall with lower landscaping that is more of a physical feature than, let's say, a row of arborvitae or shrubs of some sort. Again, I'm also not a landscape architect, so don't hold me to any type of phyllis.
Hi, Christina Laris. Just to start, I just want to 100% be certain that this programmatic changes or the building changes is really meeting everything that Michelle or the Senior Center has had on their must-have list. Even though we're losing that nicer, elevated walkway, which was more of an amenity or nice to have.
So we did discuss this with Michelle, and Michelle is on board. We're still meeting all of the program requirements. We have pulled back some of the what I would call wish list items. Elevated walking track is a wish list item.
Sure.
It would be a super nice amenity, but we still have walking area.
Right. I mean, I found it attractive and lovely, but and to what Ron has reiterated or Dave has reiterated or suggested, if we're going to go down this path, it might be best to do the best we can, not just, it's important to compromise, but is that the right place to compromise? I think it's just things for us to consider or think about as a committee. I do want to ask a question about the parking in the rear, right? So you've brought it closer. Would you be able to give a rough estimate of, from those forward facing, the closest parking spaces, like what the number of feet someone would be walking? Just thinking about seniors and even people who still have a great deal of mobility, walking great distances is challenging.
Could I get some? Yeah, so this is the current configuration of the parking area, and you can see there's a line through the back of the parking, and it says overflow
right,
to the
I understand that, right.
So there's about 15 parking spaces from the back right headed towards the building. That's about 150 feet. and then maybe another 50 feet or 75 feet, I'm guessing. So it's about 200 feet right now. It's our intention that we think the parking area should probably come closer to the building, or there should be parking against that patio space, so that we're bringing more handicap spots closer to the building. The patio is diagrammatic. It's probably bigger than it needs to be right now.
Okay. Fair enough. That makes sense. Yeah, those were really all I had. Thank you.
I think a point about that too is a lot of the seniors will be parking in the front, which is a very close space. So we'll keep that in mind too.
Sure. And then even if someone's not doing that, there is still a drop off. So if I'm bringing my mom, I could drop her off and then go park the vehicle. So I get that. There's that flexibility too.
All right. Rich Kroll. Hi, Tom. Thanks for doing yet another rendering. So are you saying that the square footage of this design is the same as what we've had? It's still around 32,000 square feet?
The iteration of this design is actually 30,000 and change. So it's become about as efficient as it can be. In addition, we've reduced volume in the space, which has a cost. We've also reduced an intermediate floor level, which has a cost. Building design is iterative, as you're aware. When we did our first attempts at this design, we probably had scope creep that really wasn't accounted for. So the, elevated walking path is extra square footage. It's also extra cost. So those were things that the original design didn't have that we added to the concept here. So not only in this iteration have we removed a lot of the scope creep, but we've also reduced the size of the facility.
Do you have an idea of on a percentage basis what that cost reduction might be?
Wow. Really?
10%?
Right now?
20%?
It might be
ballpark.
It might be maybe more along the lines of 5%. It's hard to say because we've lost time, right?
Right.
So, moving to explore this site has now started a new process. It's 6 months later. We're addressing escalation. So if escalation is currently 3.5% or 4%, and we've done it for half a year, the time has cost us 2%. So maybe we saved 5% in overall cost, but we lost 2%. So the net is maybe 3%. But we've simplified a lot of things. So, and we've simplified the footprint. And it's hard to, at this stage, account for that because we're just looking at it from a square foot cost evaluation. But the simpler we make the building, the actual amount of dollars it takes to build a square foot goes down. So how's that for a very wishy-washy answer?
And I guess that'll also reduce long-term maintenance costs, right? Ongoing operational costs, maintenance costs, all that will be lower. I do like going to 2 stories. I mean, that simplifies a lot of things as well, right? Less elevator.
Absolutely.
Kind of
And keep in mind that in this iteration, the gymnasium exercise space walks directly to grade. So that space, the doors can be open, they can be interactive programming with the outdoor patio, as well as on the other side of the plan, we have the arts and crafts space, which will now be a 2-story space, which is open to that exterior patio. So it provides a significant amount of flexibility in programming for art events, gallery events. It's something that really caught Michelle's eye. It's something that wasn't in the earlier schemes at other sites. So this is a really nice change and a good amenity.
I do like the covered entrance being at the main level. I think that'll be more useful to people, right? If that's the main place they're going.
I really
in the
tried to
building.
sell to Michelle that we couldn't make that happen, and she wasn't having it. She let me have it.
All right. So with the gym height being 18 feet, are all of the rooms on that level going to be 18 feet tall then?
They could be physically, but probably not. Bathrooms, service spaces, offices. The food pantry will be that tall, because there's no reason to hang a ceiling lower. And the arts and crafts space will be that tall because we want all the natural light to come in. So all the spaces at the back of that floor level would be probably lower.
And what height would be required for a basketball program to be viable?
That's an interesting conversation. You can put a basketball hoop in the space. Basketball hoop is an adult height is 10 feet. So if you have 6 or 8 feet clear above the hoop, you still could throw a ball at the basket, and you could play in short, small groups. But if you put youth baskets in there that were like 8 feet tall, you could have youth or kiddie basketball in the space. But you're really not having adult or teenage high school or middle school basketball events in there.
SIA kites are 24, right?
Pardon?
Yes. Thank you.
For high school, the clear requirement is 24 feet. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was the question. Okay. And again, we're building into grade, so I've kind of asked this before with my maintenance hat on. But is there maintenance that has to be done when the building is built into the grade in order to keep, long-term from having water infiltration or problems like that?
Yeah, so there will be a special construction assembly against the foundation wall. There will be probably membrane applied waterproofing, which is like a membrane roofing that goes against the building, and then you have a drainage plane, and then you have a hydraulic plane, which is like stone or something that water can run through. And then there'll be a series of pipes so that you can ensure that any hydrostatic pressure or water or drainage that gets against that wall goes away, doesn't drain into the building.
Okay, but is there something that has to be done on like a schedule, like every 25 years we have to, I don't know, clean out the drainage system or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And you had mentioned Michelle, the program director, she's okay without being able to have, kind of a full basketball
right there.
program. Oh, is she here?
I'll ask Michelle to comment on that.
She's behind the podium.
Hello, Michelle Jacob, Director of Human Services. I know the last meeting I made a comment, and I felt it was very important to say seniors play basketball. And I thought it was important because I was hearing a lot of we don't need a gym for seniors. And I wanted to make it very clear that seniors play every sport. So if there's a gym, they will use it. I feel the design right now fits our needs. It's wonderful. If there is a gym, I think seniors would use it, but it is not at the top of our priority list. I would say it is definitely an item on a wish list, and that was a great way to reframe that because that would be an item on a wish list. Same with that beautiful walking path. But the design that is here now is fantastic and beautiful. It meets all of our needs. And if there's a gym, that would be fantastic.
Great,
Good.
thank you.
Okay.
I think that was everything I had, so thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Kelly Malazzi. I just want to address a couple of things that were brought up by the public tonight. And I don't know if there's anybody here that can answer this question, but with regard to any potential human remains on the property, was the church required to disclose any of that? I mean, I just want to, if there is going to be some required archaeological dig or something, or have you had that experience before?
We have had that experience before where we've had to do an archaeological dig, but that was because we discovered it during excavation. in this particular case, I think, as pointed out by the public, we probably want to do a little bit of research and ask the prior owner or user,
Okay.
do some diligence. I'm not aware of that. Again, that's the first I heard of it this evening. I'm not surprised by that. It is a church property, so it's a good point brought up by the public and something we should look into.
Thank you. Another question that I hadn't thought of is in the demolition process. I know you've demolished buildings before, so do we see the relocation of critters, and is that a concern?
I think obviously, like anything, it's a concern. I don't know what the level of infestation is in the current building. Again, I think we would want to look into that and see what we can do to mitigate that.
Yeah.
If there is a significant issue in the building now, which I'm not aware of, then the building owner, the town of Trumbull, should potentially look into that. It may be as simple as having pest control provide services to the building to rid that of its current infestation. As an unoccupied structure, that may be something that has to be done on an annual basis, and may persist until the building is potentially demolished.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to underscore what Tony said, that I do want us to be very cognizant of these heritage trees and where they are, and do whatever we can to preserve them at all possible. And then it also sounded like with what you were talking about with regard to the border or the buffer on the side of the Walsh's property, it sounds to me like what I was hearing you saying is that you are willing to collaborate with them to make sure that the buffer on that side of the property is satisfactory to them as the abutter.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of flexibility as to what can and might ultimately happen in that area.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All my questions have been answered. So thank you for listening to everybody and making that smaller. I'm glad Michelle's happy with the floor plan. That's one of the most important things as director of the senior center. That's really important. So, and I'd like to see everything stay as is. If she's happy with it, I'm happy to recommend that.
Okay, I have a few, and a lot of you guys covered a lot of them, but I'll just reiterate some of the points. One thing I want to make clear, we keep calling them the pickleball courts, and I'd like to stop calling that now. I think we really need to look at it as a recreational area and the flexibility that comes with that. I agree, one of my losses that I felt was an indoor walking track. I think we could still accomplish that with a bigger fitness area of the size that you're presenting now. It may not be as pretty and elevated as other ones we've been to, but I think it gives us some more opportunities to create some community uses as well as senior uses. I think there's not enough places to walk inside around here, and I think it's important for all. So I know, I think Mike mentioned about reducing to 2 pickleball courts. My concern is, this compromise of this gym to a recreation area has already kind of taken potentially some things away. That being said, I think we can look at some basketball programs, and I don't want to keep saying basketball outside. I think there's opportunities. I know there's a kindergarten to 2nd grade program that we could be looking at. I think if we keep that space at the size it is, that we have that opportunity. I also think it's mentioned a couple times, that buffer that looked very different than the others. I hope we can continue to look at that. Obviously, these are just a lot of trees drawn up now, and the landscape architect will make some of those decisions. My biggest question, I guess, would be the location of where the building actually is, and this probably goes to the trees a little bit. Is that based totally on the slope? I mean, I look at how the church is now and where it slopes down, where the back entrance is in the front. What flexibility is there for exact location on the property? We know we won't be using those back parking spaces as much. Is there a chance, and I have no idea of this, based on the slope of, instead of moving the parking lot up to us, is there a chance to move the building back further?
So if we can show the site plan again. We can move it back further, but we're trying to keep the building also away from the neighbor's property line, which is in the, you can see it to the right of the lower right corner of the proposed building.
Okay.
We're also trying to reinforce the street wall along Main Street. So there are a lot of structures all the way up and down Main Street, and generally they form an imaginary line called the street wall. If you lined up all the fronts of them, we're sitting a little bit back of that. If anything, I would try and get a little closer to the street and a little further away from the neighbor's property. We also we have some flexibility to move the building north and south a little bit. So we have a little bit of a room to do that, but we're trying to be sensitive to the buffer on the north. We could squeak the buffer on the north a little bit smaller and make the buffer on the south a little bit bigger. So there's still room for fine tuning, but we think east-west, the building's about where it wants to be. The grade actually also falls off to the street, so the building sits about at the high point right now, which allows us to maximize the space at the lower level. If we move it forward to the street too much more, then we have to fill that site. We might have to have a retaining wall to hold the parking up at grade. So we're trying to avoid that and kind of balance all of those things. But we have a little bit, what I'm saying is we have a little bit of room to massage it a little bit closer to the road, potentially a little bit further north, yes. But further back is more difficult because we don't want to impinge upon the neighbor's property in that corner.
So I know, that we've been making that a goal, and it should be, I guess, backing up with Kelly and talking about these trees, just a general look at where they are. I know one of them lost part of itself in the last windstorm, as a lot of us lost part of our trees probably in that August storm, I believe it was. So I guess trying to get a better idea of understanding the heritage of those trees and what's possible to build around or not. So I think probably the compromise of that, of where the building is going to be, has to be another factor that we weren't really thinking so much about before. But that's something we're not going to be able to solve right now by any means until we look at it further, obviously.
We may have a better understanding when we get the survey of what we can and cannot accomplish.
Anybody have anything else specifically?
Hi, thanks, Lori. Just one last thing, just to note, could we as a committee ask the town's tree warden to do a health assessment of those particular trees? Is that something that we have the ability to do along with the site, evaluation that is getting done?
I don't see why not.
My point is that it's great to have, if there's a way, to preserve some, but we also should be cognizant of the fact that trees don't last forever.
Right.
Right. I live in one of the oldest homes in town, and I have 200 some odd year old sugar maples, and one of them's half dead at the moment. Right. So I think it would be good to understand.
Good point. Thank you. So I think as far as a group, in order to keep this process moving along, there's been a lot of questions about process that we're not close to yet until we decide which iteration we really are thinking about going with. So I don't know that this calls for a vote, or if anybody has a strong feeling about this latest iteration that it's something we shouldn't be going forward with, or opposite. I would say maybe speak to that now. I'll say for myself, my first instinct was kind of the reaction some of us are having is, what are we losing? It's grown on me the more I think about it, and I don't think it's a huge compromise. I think there's a lot of things we can get out of this that aren't obvious now, but that's just my perspective. So if anybody has any strong feelings against this particular concept, it would probably be a good time to bring it up now. So if not, I would say the architects need some direction, right? Yes.
Yes, I don't need approval, formal approval of the site plan. Just, hey, Tom, we like the direction this is going in. Please continue to iterate it and continue to develop it. And I think we got some good feedback this evening and some things chased down, so I would like to do that diligence.
Me too. I don't think we need a vote, but unless anybody's opposed, I think all of us are in agreement that we should continue to look at the concept plan. And then kind of next, there's one other thing on the agenda, but I'm going to skip some things as far as what your next steps are. Our next steps were, as this plan, if we can keep continuing with this concept.
Well, if we like the direction this concept is going, we will start to develop some of the details associated with it, get my site civil engineer involved, put some concepts together for the site elements, and take it a little bit to the next level. Incorporate some of the things we heard tonight, get some information from George regarding the survey. Whenever we go to the next level of detail, it always generates new questions, so I think that'll be beneficial in terms of how this ultimately gets developed.
You mentioned traffic study before, and I think we're all comfortable with going with a town-used traffic company, but when do you think that will happen? Is that something, I think that we, learning from our last lesson at our last traffic study is we probably have some parameters that we want to be added in there, like during school days, more conversation with the senior center as far as where their hours are and when those peak times would be. It's hard to assess what the recreational and or community peak times would be because it doesn't exist yet, but those kind of things that we'd want to make sure that they understand. So when do you think the traffic study would be happening?
So it's already been engaged. I don't know if and when they're gonna schedule their counts. The good news is there's significantly more historic data on the Main Street corridor, so that's good. And we also have done the programmatic diligence for the senior center, so we can use some of that data.
Okay.
So I will report back to you as to when it's going to be done.
Okay. Just important that they look at the school calendar too.
No,
That's
understood. We are aware. We're all on the same page. It has to be done during general, town business. No vacations, no holiday time.
Okay. Is there anything else you need from us at this point in any of what you guys are doing?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, for being very reactive to both public comments, some of the concerns here. I think at one point you said you looked at Michelle and thought we need to be making some changes. So we are so appreciative of your flexibility and moving on this in a direction that you think will be most appropriate and beneficial to all. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, back off. And so with that, I am going to back up and talk a little bit about the Abutting Neighbors Walking Tour. I put some notes that I actually shared. I think I saw Mr. McGarry come in, and Mr. McGill had been speaking with them about gathering the abutting neighbors in a tour. It is not a Community Facilities Building Committee meeting, so there cannot be more than 5 of you at once. So they've scheduled 2 different times for this Saturday. Weather looks good. That's a benefit. Could never know with all those possible dates coming out. we talked about some real specifics, though. This is not going to be an opportunity for Q&A. This is not a bunch of neighbors walking around. It'll be these two gentlemen walking, a group of you each. I can't be going on to neighbors, so I won't be joining you. Kelly's already done it. And basically, whatever neighbors are comfortable with you coming onto their property to look at the Grace Church property from their viewpoint. So they'll be coordinating that, but it's important to know that it's not just going to kind of be a free-for-all, be within an hour. It's just your opportunity to look at from that side. It would be inappropriate for any kind of Q&A since it's not a meeting. I know some people have reached out to me about when they could go, so I just wanted to clarify that of who can go when. So far, for the 10 o'clock, I had Rich, Dave, and Dean preferred that time. Dawn, Ron, and Tony, I had put you at 11, and then I hadn't heard back from, I believe, maybe Christine, Mike, and Matt. Is there a time, or can you go?
10 would be fine. 11, as long as it wraps up by 11:30. I have to bring my daughter to some playing at 11:40.
All right, so we're going to try to put you in at 10. Matt, is there a better time for you?
I'm working Saturday.
Oh, so there's no time for you. Got it. And Mike?
Yeah, I'm unavailable Saturday.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And then obviously when you, at our next meeting, so that'll be 7 people that can come back and kind of let us know some of their observations, just as we did with the other one. So thank you for taking that time. Thank you for the gentlemen who are leading it. And I just want to be clear to the public that it's not just going to kind of be a free-for-all meeting, but more just an opportunity for the committee members to see those properties that neighbors are comfortable showing.
Lori.
If you don't want your meeting, yep.
Lori, I think the agreement is absolutely right. Just the butters. We'll meet you folks. Paul and I will meet you folks in the Grace lot.
Yep, that was the next line. Yeah. I was just going to tell you guys meet at the Grace Church property and park in there, so we're not interrupting any streets or neighborhoods. And appreciate everybody taking a Saturday to do this. I know everybody's gone above and beyond, so I thank you for doing that. Yes, Mike.
Before I forget, there was a resident that asked about timeline and structure of our committee. Maybe you could just touch base on that. I know we talk about it a lot in committee, but there are probably a lot of people here that maybe haven't heard that information. What we do, how we pass it along to town council, maybe the whole step to the completion of where we'd be going with this.
I can do that if everybody's clear and comfortable about the tour. We'll move on to that. That was actually in my next set of notes, because I did want to talk, and I'm glad you guys are still here, about going to town council. Town council has asked us for an update, this is not for an approval. That is not the final plan that is going through. They just want to know where we're at. We try to update them regularly. Usually I go. They've asked if the architects can come. That would be on Monday, December 2nd. And it will just basically be a presentation similar to what we're doing here. So that's the town council's next perspective, is just getting an update. Let's see, if I had to do how this moves along, kind of the things we've been talking about is kind of in QA&M's hands as far as all those studies and things that have to happen. From there, we would have to go, oh, Dan, yay.
Just want to clarify, there's some indications the council is not going to meet on December 2nd. They may meet later in the week or the following week. So just for everyone to know, that's an open date at this point.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. You know what, do you want to stand up there for a minute? I'll put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
Since you did write the building committee rules, just kind of give a...
1970 what?
Exactly. I make fun of you for that forever. If you could just kind of give what our next steps are once the nitty-gritty gets done. Is that what you're kind of getting to, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's what the resident asked. What would be the timeline and the step process to see this, from start to finish?
Who else needs to be seen? Okay.
Yeah.
The timeline is difficult to predict because there's so many steps. But there is required the traffic study is required. The whatever environmental work that needs to be done has to be done. It goes to the police commission because they're the traffic authority for the town. And then It's going to go to a committee of the council. You're going to report back. The council has the ultimate authority here. So it is and obviously with regard to, or maybe not obviously, if the project ultimately is going to cost more than $15 million, then there is a referendum. Everybody participated in the referendum last week with regard to the Hillcrest Middle School. It's $15 million, and that number actually is a little bit higher because under the charter, that number gets reviewed by the Board of Finance for based on increases in the CPI. Thank you. She's on the Board of Finance, but the CPIU index. So, and I think the last time somebody looked at it, that would bring us to about $17 million at this point. But if it exceeds that, then then it will have to, the Board of Finance and then the Town Council have to approve a bond authorization, and once that's done, just as happened with the Hillcrest Middle School, there will be a town-wide referendum. If the people in the town, building can be beautiful, if the people in the town don't want to pay for it, then they have their opportunity there. So it will go to the town for final vote. But in the meantime, this committee is going to report back, and through the architect, going to report back as to what the progress is. I think I'm not sure if formal vote has been taken to move from Hardy Lane to Main Street for this project. No, so that obviously also would have to be. I don't think it has. So at some point, the council's got to say, based on what you bring back to them, the council's got to say, project's moving forward at Grace Church property. Okay. Any other questions with regard to that?
There's a couple other, the health inspector has to weigh in, the fire marshal weigh in about the egress that we've been talking about. So those little weigh-ins that have to happen, but as far as where the next steps are, and it's hard to tell a timeline until we get this to a point that it's ready to be approved or not, so.
Mr. Arcari would probably tell you that he actually has the plans already. And as soon as you say go, he'll push the button, and 2 weeks from now, we'll be ready to build.
If he's had that all along and we're still doing this, then we need to have some words. All right, and planning and zoning? Yeah, I was just going to say that. Sorry.
Town of Trumbull is not subject to zoning regulations. I guess we need to have a 824 approval to actually place the building in that spot. But as far as the standard building, whether it's if this is a residential zone, a commercial zone, a mixed zone, whatever it is, to that extent, we're not subject to zoning. As far as setbacks are concerned, not subject to zoning. We would be subject to wetlands, or people asked about wetlands. If in fact it's determined by the soil scientists that there are wetlands, I've heard tell, I haven't seen it myself, but I understand that there has been some wetland flagging, and if in fact it's determined that there are wetland soils, again, wetlands is determined by soil type. If it's determined that there are wetland soils, then and the construction is going to take place within the regulated area, then it would be necessary to go to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission for approval.
And I think that's 100 feet, but I don't want to. I'm going to say I think because I'm not 100% sure. Correct. It's 100 feet, so hopefully we'll have that no matter where it ends up. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up? All right, I think I will try to get out information about the town council meeting as soon as we find out, and obviously for Tom and Rocco for them to be doing our update. If there's anything else that you think need to be included in that, let me know. And other than that, we will call for an adjournment.
I would like to move for an adjournment. Kelly Malazzi.
Second, Dawn Contapio.
Favor? Yeah.
Yeah.